Hello, I am Joshua P. Warren, and this is Joshua P. Warren Daily. And this is my first podcast of the year 2020. I hope you are off to a great start. I am off and running, getting all my ducks in a row for a year full of weird and wonderful and amazing projects, including things I don't even know about yet. I always have to leave a little space for the things that I don't even know are going to happen, and that's what makes life exciting, embracing all that. I could talk about whatever I want regarding this new year and starting this new decade, but honestly, I must say that I have this brand new big ass thick book in my hands that is a very interesting manual, if you will, for the times. And of course, if you have listened to me for any significant period of time, and I've been involved in media now for probably close to 30 years, um, you know that I have been friends for a long time, good friends with a man named Timothy Green Beckley, who is called Mr. UFO by some people. He is a publisher and media mogul in New York City, and he is one of those people who had the ambition and the energy to get out, especially in sort of that crucial, now we consider it kind of nostalgic heyday of ufology in the 1960s going into the 70s, and explore these really obscure topics and interview people and document things for posterity that are priceless. And so he has featured me and my work in a number of his publications over the years. And so he contacted me recently and asked if he could include some of my work on the Brown Mountain Lights of Western North Carolina in a new book that he was publishing, which is an anthology of a lot of information related to strange phenomena and UFOs. And I said, absolutely. So I sent him everything he needed. And in fact, that's one of the things that's so outstanding about Tim Beckley is that he made that trip in the 1960s to Brown Mountain when things were really rustic, and he had some incredible experiences and meetings there that I'll be telling you about more later in this podcast. So we've always had at least that sort of Brown Mountain Lights connection there. So anyway, a few days ago, he sent me the copy, hot off the presses, of this new book. And man, let me tell you, this thing is heavy. His books, for one thing, he doesn't publish like little novel-sized books. He publishes books that are the size of like a large coloring book, except they're hundreds of pages long. I mean, this book is 360 pages long, packed with text and illustrations and photographs. I mean, just high quality stuff. But this thing is actually heavy. Like it's too big to take on an airplane probably. That's one bad thing I'll say about it. But if he made it small enough to take on an airplane, it would be like War and Peace. It'd be one of those super thick books. But no, this is a big, heavy book, and it's called Timothy Green Beckley's UFOs Deja Vu. And I immediately thought, well, what does that mean? UFOs Deja Vu. By the way, just to toss it out there, French words, right? Do you even know how to spell deja vu? I want you to test yourself. Take a minute. Try to spell deja vu. I'll give you a hint. It's two words. All right. Here's how you spell it. Deja, and then VU. Dejavu. And also I never took French. I took Deutsch. I took German when I was in school. And then I learned a decent amount of Espanol Spanish when I was in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. But I never took French, so I don't know what you call these little accent marks over the E and the A in deja vu, but it's called UFOs Deja Vu, and I wondered, what does he mean by that? So my very first instinct was, well, maybe what he's saying is, well, he's been around doing this kind of stuff so long that he's just seeing patterns. And we're going in circles, which almost makes it seem like, well, maybe this is boring to him because he's just seen us going in the same. But actually, that's not what he means at all. Turns out he's talking about something that is much more specific and technical in this book. And that was a surprise to me, and I'm going to explain it in a minute because the subtitle to this book, again, it's called UFOs Deja Vu, subtitle Skinwalkers, Shapeshifters, Alien Portals, and Vortexes to Other Dimensions. And then there is a big red sunburst and it says Alien Encounters Over and Over Again by Timothy Green Beckley and Sean Castile, with Maria D Andrea, Diane Tessman, Brent Rains, Tim Swartz, Tom Dongo, Linda Bradshaw, William Hamilton, Erica Lukes, David Partridge, Nick Redfern, Chris O'Brien, Scott Corrales, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Joshua P. Warren, Albert S. Rosales, plus exclusive interviews with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. My God. If you look at the back of this thing, and by the way, I know you're thinking, okay, Josh, are you selling this book? No, I'm not. Tim asked me if he could put my work in here, and I said, yeah. And I sent it to him, and it's in there. I'm not making a penny off of this book. I'm just telling you about it because it's so amazing. This is everything this guy publishes is so unique. There's nothing else like this in the whole publishing world. And it's like, I don't mean to be morbid here, but I'm just going to toss it out there. I know Tim won't mind. When Timothy Green Beckley dies, that's going to be like the end of an era because only he publishes stuff with this level of depth and quality. And so that's going to be a sad day for us when he passes on to another dimension because, even though I'm sure he'll be looking forward to it, God knows what new adventures he'll have. There's nobody like him who publishes this kind of material the way he does. So that's why I'm telling you about it, because you listen to this podcast and you're the type of person who should find this mind blowing, all this stuff. On the back it says, not all UFOs are nuts and bolts craft from other planets. Here is definitive proof that many are paraphysical in nature. Isn't that great? Paraphysical in nature. Are UFOs piloted by beings from a parallel universe or another dimension? Is it possible for these ultra-terrestrials to travel across time and space by entering our world and exiting again through portals, vortexes, and stargates? Is there a harmonious relationship between Bigfoot and other cryptids and flying saucers? Can UFOs transport the deceased to a dead zone? The deja vu factor exposed. What causes these starcraft to be seen repeatedly at certain locations? Okay, now you see why he's talking about deja vu. Is the practice of Native American black magic responsible for the bizarre phenomena taking place on Skinwalker Ranch? What is behind the appearance of black helicopters, the mutilation of animals, and the menacing men in black? Is there photographic proof that strange creatures exist all around us but are invisible to the naked eye? See, yes, there is. As a matter of fact, that's something that I've been working on, some little invisibility projects. Anyway, it goes on to say here, join over a dozen of the world's leading UFO researchers and parapsychologists as they break out of the matrix to explore and expose a truly freakish universe that we are only beginning to comprehend exists at all. Here is irrefutable proof that we are surrounded by unknown interacting dimensions which we can fall through and disappear into forever. We also must learn to confront this dark unknown and somehow manage to deal with these sometimes terrifying situations, even as the governments of the world work to keep us uninformed so they can preserve the status quo. Oh boy. You know what? I'm going to read you some of this. And because, again, Tim and I are good friends, and he allows me to read portions of his stuff to you. And why wouldn't he? I mean, he loves just getting the word out, and everything he presents is so good that you're gonna buy it. As a matter of fact, I'll put up a link to this book on the Amazon.com website. Let's see, how much is this? $21.95 to get this actual big ass, thick hardback. It's not hardback, but it's a big, thick, like well printed. You almost feel like you have a hardback book in your hands. Let's put it that way. Or you can get it on Kindle for $9.99. So I want to just read to you some of this. I think it's a great way to start off 2020, is just giving you some of my thoughts on the things that he's writing about, because Timothy Green Beckley, he's seen it all. He has an approach to this that nobody else has. Like, I don't know that anybody has experienced enough and has dug enough and probably has been reckless enough to go out and do some, some exploration as he has. There may be scientists out there who know a bit or a piece of this or that or the other, but here is his introduction to UFOs Deja Vu. It's deja vu over and over again. The fearless ravings of Timothy Green Beckley and Maria D Andrea. And I don't even know if I'm saying her name correctly. But I've seen it in print. I've always seen it in print. Maria D Andrea. And so basically in this introduction, Tim, he writes most of it. Well, actually, I guess they kind of split it up 50-50. So, okay, so here's what Tim writes. Quote, "It's deja vu all over again," end quote, was a famous yogiism attributed to Yankee Baseball Hall of Fame catcher Yogi Berra, who explained that this expression originated when he witnessed Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris repeatedly hitting back-to-back home runs during the Yankees' seasons of the 1960s. In less colorful lingo, deja vu means that one has lived through a situation before. Whether it is in reference to walking down a street you know you have never walked down previously but are doing it again, or sighting a UFO in pretty much the same local over and over and over as if it is wedged into the same spot in space, to see how deja vu might apply, I would like to reference Bill Murray in Groundhog Day And Tom Cruise, who plays a soldier in a fierce battle against aliens, who finds himself thrown into a time loop in which he relives the same brutal fight and his death over and over in a case of deja vu gone terribly wrong. He's talking there about a movie called Edge of Tomorrow, and I've never seen that movie. Anyway, Tim goes on to say, and while space does not permit us to reveal the location of the hundreds of spots where you might train your eyes on the sky and observe something very unusual hovering in the clouds, and perhaps lowering itself to the ground and interacting with you or your surroundings in various manners, both positively and negatively, depending on the situation, and your proximity to a particular portal, vortex, or gateway, as far as I'm concerned, you may use the terms interchangeably, despite variances which we shall go into as we progress in our understanding of UFOs Deja Vu in general. In French, it means seen before. That's what deja vu means, seen before. But let it be known that some portals are permanent, other vortexes are temporary, while some gateways come and go. I warn you that we are about to embark on a strange trip. It will be a lengthy voyage through hyperspace to other dimensions and parallel universes. There are some pretty weird, to our current trend of thinking, scenes, events, and beings out there, wherever there might be referring to, but be fearless, as we have a mighty crew at our book's helm to transport you to places you have never been before. As we go along, they shall be identified. Most of these Trekians I have ventured out into the galaxy with before. One of the things that we have already predetermined fairly early is that we are not dealing with, quote, ordinary nuts and bolts craft from other planets. There is something decisively paranormal about UFOs that makes the topic much more complex and more difficult to prove a theory. It's advanced quantum physics for the general public. It circumvents normalcy, and so you can call into play the supernatural, like it or not. And as you'll see by examining Tom Dongo's 19 haunting point synopses of the unknown, it's a chapter in this book, I guess, and Brent Rain's testimonial on UFOs and their relationship to the spirit world and life beyond death. There's a subheading here. It says, Enter Maria D Andrea. And again, I don't know if I'm saying her name right or not. Tim says, over the years, I've been known to consult our in-house psychic and shaman, Maria D Andrea, on the relationship between this world and all others. Maria is usually spot on with her thoughts and opinions when it comes to wormholes, portals, and time slips, although she is not that connected with the UFO phenomena. Her thing, in quotations, being more metaphysical. When I told Maria UFO Deja Vu was in the works and I was gathering thoughts and conjecture on portals, vortexes, and stargates, well, she chimed right in and sent me her own thinking on the subject as set forth herein. Here is where Maria D Andrea takes over the introduction. Here's what she has to say. Why don't we just call them doorways? Shamans and psychics use vortexes and portals all the time. It's more or less how we get around. Going through them and exiting on the other side is our method for seeing what's going on within these other realms. They connect shamans and magi to other realms. A vortex consists mainly of a flow with two main components: rapid velocity, mainly greatest at its center, and circulation. These in the paranormal field can be looked upon as carrying high positive psychic energy, as in some locations around the earth. These types of vortexes are mainly found on ley lines or energy grids where a lot of UFO sightings and encounters take place. When we are gathering energy to heighten our abilities, which enable us to go dimension hopping, it's a method a lot of psychics have gravitated toward, passed down from generation to generation. I sometimes feel drained if I spend too much time near an active portal, as we're not meant to be on such a high vibrational or alpha brain wave level, that is psychic intuitive level, for too long a time. Limit your time there, or all sorts of crazy things may begin to transpire, and you may feel anxieties and have to get yourself back to, quote, normal through some tranquil meditation. Now, if you are visiting a portal or vortex, you should take care to utilize psychic protection. Remember, you are going to enter and interact with different realms. This is a doorway between our world and these parallel dimensions, distant places on our home planet and through time and space. Some could be hazardous to your health and well-being. Sometimes we visit portals of our own free will. Other times they just open up without warning. And sometimes we can build them. On one of these occasions, I was out hiking by myself up in the mountains in Pennsylvania. As I walked through the woods, I heard a sound that seemed like a soft wind, and part of the landscape in front of me disappeared, and stars and planets became visible, as if I were floating in space. As I looked, I saw what seemed to be two round discs flying erratically towards some destination. I knew there were beings inside these vessels, and I wanted to see more. As I walked toward the portal, I had a feeling of being stopped as I got closer. It felt like I was trying to walk forward, but was only pushing into an etheric substance that felt like jello, and I wasn't going anywhere. It was very frustrating because I'm a curious and active person, as most sages and shaman are. I automatically put up my psychic shield as a defense mechanism so that nothing could harm me. And as I looked on, I noticed the, quote, ships were changing colors as they rotated. I didn't hear any sounds emanating from them, nor did I see beings inside, but I had an overwhelming feeling they were positive and meant no harm. I was lucky to have such a positive experience. Warning, not everyone does. As I was gazing upon the setting before me and trying to gather more details about the ship and its occupants, the portal closed and I found myself back in the woods again. To this day, I wonder what sort of beings were in the craft. I've opened doorways before and since, but I couldn't get to the same place again. I think sometimes the universe just messes with you, and they should have given me the proper coordinates, right? Well, do learn from your journey, because the vision quest is what this is all about. Remember, these vortexes and portals have been known and utilized in the spiritual fields for centuries, but may be new to the average UFO researcher. It feels good to know that science is just starting to delve into such matters as parallel dimensions, but we must learn the proper ways to deal with them so that we don't get burned. Some ultra-terrestrials, as Tim calls them, mean us no harm. Others can be quite negative, while others are just blundering into our realm without knowing what they are doing. There is, after all, a, quote, trickster element to much of this, as just about every Native American can tell you, if they're willing to discuss the subject. And then Tim comes back in his voice, and he says, Maria's concluding thoughts about Native Americans should be underscored because a lot of the UFO Deja Vu phenomena takes place on or near sacred Indian ground throughout the Southwest, though it is not limited to this part of the country exclusively, or for that matter, the rest of the world. Now it is time to plot our course and set sail. He gives his email address and conspiracyjournal.com. Pretty interesting introduction, wouldn't you say? So, I told you he contacted me to contribute to this book because of my work on the Brown Mountain Lights. And my one sentence, if you for some reason have never heard of the Brown Mountain Lights, my one sentence to describe this phenomenon to you after describing it over and over for 27 years or whatever, is that Brown Mountain is a low-lying ridge in the middle of the Pisgah National Forest in western North Carolina. And for hundreds of years, people have seen multicolored balls of light floating on or around this ridge at night, and no one can explain what they are. Okay, that's what the Brown Mountain Lights are, and they've been studied by all kinds of scientists and metaphysicians. But what's really cool, and this is for those of you who listen to this podcast who really know about this, who know about the Brown Mountain lore and everything. One of the weirdest characters who ever went there to who was involved in the Brown Mountain scene was a guy named Ralph Lael. And Ralph Lael, he had a little shop and museum near Brown Mountain in the 1960s. And he claimed that he had, I don't know if you'd call it, been abducted by aliens, because he pretty much volunteered to go. But he traveled with aliens. He went inside the mountain, and he even had a little mummified body that he claimed was the mummified body of an alien. That he would show you for a couple of bucks, and then one day Ralph Lael died, and I don't know what happened to him, and somebody bulldozed his shop down, and the alien mummy disappeared, and that was the end of that. And one of the few people who was a UFO researcher who got to actually meet Ralph Lael back in the 1960s was Timothy Green Beckley. And so he actually has this chapter he wrote before my chapter on Brown Mountain. It's chapter 27. It's called Giant Crystals and the Mummified Little Man. And he starts off by writing, I know of at least one UFO vantage point just above, one UFO vantage point just about anyone with a car can travel to, and there is a good chance you will probably see something pretty damn strange, as thousands of others have over a period of many, many years. This gateway to a parallel dimension is in North Carolina. It's in the middle of the Brown Mountain region, and you can stay at the nearby Holiday Inn in Morganton, about 15 miles north of an actual highway marker which has been posted by the state. It provides any visitor with the best view to look and see these mysterious lights that bob and weave across the sky, finally settling down below the ground, disappearing into the crevices. I went there circa late 60s with the posthumous Jim Moseley, the, quote, trickster of ufology, and the always very jolly Allen Greenfield, over Christmas week. I say that because we were stuck in a rather low-end cabin, as I recall, quote, singing, Christmas carols, which is remarkable because Jim was tone deaf, Alan is Jewish, and to my way of thinking, it's not rock and roll enough unless Elvis is in the room, and maybe his spirit was. Okay, so this gives you an idea of the adventure these fellows were on. But then he goes on to talk about what it was like to meet Ralph Lael. And this is, again, this is maybe a little bit too in depth or too geeky, but for those of you who have followed me and my work all these years and the Brown Mountain story, I think this is pretty damn interesting. You'll enjoy hearing what it was like to actually to have an account of what it was like to meet Ralph Lael, last name spelled Lael. He is, historically speaking, perhaps the weirdest and most mysterious human associated with the Brown Mountain Lights phenomenon. So here's what Tim writes about that. Another old-time resident of the Brown Mountain area is Ralph Lael, who was born in Alexander County. Now, of course, I'm going to pause here. Tim says, is Ralph Lael. So this shows you, now, Ralph Lael's been dead. I think he probably died probably around the time, shortly after Tim met him in the late 60s or early 70s. So some of this, is Tim recounting his experience all those years ago when this was fresh on his mind. He's not looking back on this in retrospect. He's writing this when he presumes Ralph Lael is still alive. So I'll start again. Another old-time resident of the Brown Mountain area is Ralph Lael, who was born in Alexander County on a small hillside farm in 1909. He ran for Congress in 1948 and lost by a few thousand votes. At the time, Jim, Allen, and I were there. Ralph operated the Outer Space Rock Shop Museum on Highway 181 just outside Morganton, sort of hanging over the edge of a cliff as you turned a bend in the road. It is pretty much up against a good viewing point where people go to see the lights. There was a small gravel parking lot off the winding road that led to his rather run-down establishment, which was more homespun than fancy. He only had a few items to sell in the store: soda pop and glass bottles, some chips and beef jerky that was homemade and not in packages. He had a small sign that said Brown Mountain Lights Museum, and he was a nice, friendly mountaineer. Maybe he wasn't as slick as the city folk who came to visit, but was certainly a rustic entrepreneur if there ever was one. If you ask him about the Brown Mountain Lights, he could chew your ear off, spending all afternoon talking about them, though he would appreciate it if you also bought a copy of his small, personally autographed, 75-cent booklet on the subject. And when you were finished chatting, you might pull back onto the blacktop mountain road a bit more bewildered than when you first shook hands with him. Most of the stories he told, including those things he experienced firsthand, seemed a bit far-fetched, but they were certainly entertaining. Good old Ralph would claim that he went into the mountains and had contact with these intelligent beings that were the source of the lights. Lael claims not only to have seen the lights up close, but to have communicated with them on numerous occasions as well, deciding that the only way to uncover the source of these lights was to go into the almost impassable mountain area itself. Lael started his own investigation. Shortly after midnight, he got within 100 feet of a light that had risen up from a large hole in the ground. Within 10 or 15 minutes, the first light had been joined by as many as 20 more. Shortly after, they all took off into the timber and disappeared from Lael's view. A half hour later, others began popping up along the mountainside in a smaller valley below. One came so close, within 10 feet, that Lael felt he could have read a book by it. Several expeditions and months later, Lael discovered that by asking the lights questions, they would answer by either moving up and down for yes or back and forth for no. And after this form of communicating had been established, one of the lights led Ralph to a door which leads inside of Brown Mountain. Now, I know you want me to continue reading this and telling you what the hell he saw inside Brown Mountain, but you might know that answer, but if not, I don't want to spoil anything. It's pretty extreme and amazing and unbelievable what he claims that he saw when the lights led him inside of Brown Mountain. And Tim lays it all out here and explains everything. And then that chapter is followed by the chapter that I contributed, which is a Brown Mountain Lights viewing guide. Also of note, I told you this book has a lot of illustrations and photographs in it, and one of them is a clipping from the Asheville Citizen-Times. Actually, this may have been the Asheville Tribune. From September 7th, 2013. Couple attacked by Brown Mountain Lights. I'll read you some of it. Because I'd forgotten about this, but this was in the media in Asheville. A North Carolina couple who went to see the Brown Mountain Lights on Friday night got a lot more than they bargained for. The couple said they pulled over at a look-off their friends told them about and sat there for about 2 hours before they saw lights over a ridge several hundred yards to their west. Then this is where it gets strange. The couple told the local sheriff's department that a UFO craft came over the ridge and bumped the top of the couple's car several times. At one point, the couple said the UFO was holding the couple's car to the ground, even though the man was attempting to back the car up and get away. The couple said the UFO at one point hit the back top of their car so hard that it broke the back window of the car and crushed the car down about 8 inches. The local sheriff's department said this was the first attack of this kind related to the Brown Mountain Lights. A spokesperson, Mildred Rivers, said the car received extensive damage. So that's pretty weird, isn't it? So the caption to that clipping is, "Don't be frightened. The lights can't harm you," although this newspaper clipping seems to disprove that. And this whole phenomenon, it takes on so many different dimensions. And I have talked to people in person who claim they've been chased by these lights. And a lot of people say the whole alien aspect of this is either the cause of it or they're just attracted. They're just attracted to a place on Earth that has this kind of natural energy. Who knows? But, of course, in Asheville, North Carolina, which is, an hour away from the Brown Mountain area, I have my Asheville Mystery Museum and the Haunted Asheville Ghost Tours. And when you descend the steps into the basement of the Asheville Masonic Temple to go into my Mystery Museum in an old historic building, one of the things that you will see is the world's only actual reproduction of Ralph Lael's alien mummy that he would keep there on display and show you for a couple of bucks. And the whole story behind the alien mummy is, again, it's one of those weird long ones, but basically, Lauren, my wife, as you may or may not know, is an extremely talented artist, and she's great at any type of craft and sculpture. And so Lauren actually created, using, I think there's only two I think there are two photographs that exist of Ralph Lael's alien mummy. She used those two photographs to reproduce that alien mummy, and it's the only one in the world. And so if you go to hauntedasheville.com and you take one of our tours, which run year round, rain or shine, even in blizzards, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis. I'm not joking. Like, we pride ourselves in saying we always run regardless of weather. You just have to dress appropriately, bring an umbrella if you need to. We have pictures of guides taking people from Florida on the tour when the snow is higher than their knees. So they're very popular. But you go down into the basement and you'll get to see Ralph Lael's alien mummy there. And this is the kind of stuff, like the really weird, obscure, amazing stuff that you get from this book. And again, you'd think that I just, I'm making like a fortune off of this, but I'm telling you, I don't make one penny off this book. I'm just telling you about it because it's so cool. The last thing I want to read to you is the table of contents so that you see the spectrum of stuff that's covered here. Chapter 1, Portals, Vortices, and Stargates by Diane Tessman. Chapter 2, Visitors from the Dead Zone by Brent Rains. Chapter 3, Venturing onto Sacred Ground, My Own Portal by Timothy Green Beckley. Number 4, The Four Vortexes of Sedona by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 5, Tom Dongo and the Tall Blue Man. That's by Timothy Green Beckley and Tom Dongo. Chapter 6, The Bradshaw Ranch, A Portal of Phenomenal Dimensions. That's by Linda Bradshaw. Chapter 7, The 19-Point System by Tom Dongo. Chapter 8, The Ranch on the Edge of Forever by William H. Hamilton III. Chapter 9, Vortexes at Play, Synchronicities and a Possible Healing by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 10, It's Not a Vice to Have a UFO Sighting in Sedona by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 11, UFO History in the Uintah Basin, I guess that's what that is, by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 12, Skinwalkers and Shapeshifters, The Who, What, and Where by The Whistleblower. Chapter 13, You're Unwelcome at Skinwalker Ranch by Sean Castile. Chapter 14, A Filmmaker Hunts for the Skinwalker. That is an exclusive interview with producer Jeremy Corbell by David Partridge. Chapter 15 is an exclusive interview with Mr. Skinwalker George Knapp, also by David Partridge. Chapter 16, The Lady and the Skinwalker by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 17, Shapeshifters, Werewolves, Tricksters, Monsters, and Much More by Nick Redfern. He's another great friend of mine. You've heard me talk about Nick Redfern many times. Chapter 18, The San Luis Valley, More Than Your Average Hotspot by Sean Castile. Chapter 19, Hotspots in the San Luis Valley by Chris O'Brien. Chapter 20, The UFO Data Acquisition Project by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 21, Fireballs, Black Choppers, Faceless Phantoms, and Legends of Witch Mountain by Brent Rains. Chapter 22, Multiple Phenomena at a Colorado Ranch by Dr. John Dare and Dr. Leo Sprinkle. Chapter 23, Touchdown in Pine Bush, Yakama's Nocturnal Lights and Black Dogs on Mount Misery by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 24, Fireballs, Ghost Lights, and All Sorts of Anomalous Phenomena by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 25, Dr. J. Allen Hynek and Norway's Mysterious Lights by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 26, Tripping the Lights Fantastic by Erica Lukes. Chapter 27, Giant Crystals and the Mummified Man by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 28, The Brown Mountain Lights Viewing Guide by Yours truly, Joshua P. Warren. Chapter 29, The New England Triangle by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 30, Some Call It The Thing by Timothy Green Beckley. Chapter 31, Adjuntas, A Puerto Rican Gate to the Unknown by Scott Corrales. Chapter 32, What Happened on June 28th of 1980? That's by Albert S. Rosales. And lastly, we have Chapter 33, Deja Vu Till the End of Time, the June 24th Kenneth Arnold Enigma by Timothy Green Beckley. Woo! What a book, guys. What a book. I'm practically out of breath. My arms are also tired from holding this thing for about an hour. Seriously. Because when I do this podcast, I like to stand up and sort of pace around, and that's how I've been doing this. And, my arms are tired from holding this thing. Anyway, go to Amazon, get the paperback version. It's a big old giant thick book for $21.95. Kindle for $9.99. I'll put a link up there for you at Joshua P. Warren on Twitter, at Joshua P. Warren, and a Facebook link for you as well. Or if you have any problems, just email me. You can go to joshuapwarren.com and I will point you in the right direction. Man, what a great way to start off 2020, huh? I love that it's not just nuts and bolts, because we know it's not just nuts and bolts.